Hello there, and welcome to Living with Lions, the Mountain Lion Foundation's monthly webinar series, where we present to you thanks to the generous support of our members and supporters in all 50 states and beyond. I am Brent Lyles, and I have the great honor of serving as Executive Director for the Mountain Lion Foundation. We are a national not-for-profit organization with a mission to ensure that these critically important animals survive and flourish in the wild. The organization's work focuses on science-based education, peaceful coexistence with mountain lions, and advocating for protective policies across the U.S. You can learn lots more about mountain lions and how to safely coexist with them at our website, which is just mountainlion.org. I would be remiss at this moment if I did not give you a brief glimpse of our brand spanking new, hot off the presses 2025 Mountain Lion Foundation calendar. Can you see it? Mountain Lion Foundation calendar. It's a gorgeous one this year. I mean, I say that every year, but it really is cool. This calendar is not for sale. It's a gift of appreciation for all of our members in good standing. So some of you have probably just received this in the mail yourselves. Thank you for your support. If you didn't get one and you'd like to sign up for membership, it is definitely not too late. In fact, we're just now heading into our end of year fundraising campaign. So you can learn more about and support our work as a member of the Mountain Lion Foundation at mountainlion.org. The calendar goes out to every member who has contributed at least $35 this year. And alrighty, let's get started with our webinar. Today, we are going to be talking about coexistence on the ranch. Now, notice the Q&A at the bottom of your Zoom window. Please put your questions in there as we go. And we have set aside time at the end to answer your questions, and we'll get to as many of them as we can. Now, the reason that coexistence in ranching is such a critically important topic for us here at the Mountain Lion Foundation is that across the American West, in all the states where mountain lions live, one of the leading causes of mortality, and we're talking about thousands of cougars every year, one of the leading causes of mortality is what is referred to as lethal depredation response. Now, in plain English, that means that when a livestock owner loses a goat or a sheep or cattle or some other animal to a mountain lion, which is called a depredation, in most states, with California being an exception, at least for mountain lions, that livestock owner has the option of requesting that local or state or federal agents come in and kill the lion. Now, in most cases, this is needless because the tools and tactics of peaceful coexistence do exist, and they are not as expensive or as difficult as some folks fear they might be. And the scientific research tells us that it is not just better for the lions, it's also better for the livestock because conflict is reduced in the long term, and coexistence is better for the ecosystems where these ranchers live. I want to point out that coexistence is not just about mountain lions, right? It's about all the animals out there that eat other animals. And the carnivores and the omnivores here in North America, that's coyotes, wolves, bears, and so on. For us here at the Mountain Lion Foundation, and for many of the other organizations all over the world who promote this practice of peaceful coexistence, the work is about getting the word out, right? It's about slowly, rancher by rancher, making progress on promoting the widespread adoption of these practices. And it's about values. It's about promoting coexistence as a core value. So it's a tough nut to crack, but we have two champions of coexistence here with us today. First is Kelly Hendricks, who serves as the Ranching with Wildlife Coordinator for Project Coyote, one of our fellow not-for-profit organizations focused on wildlife across the country. Kelly lives and works on a cattle ranch in Sonoma County, California. Second is a face that's likely familiar to most of you, our own Gowan Batiste, the Coexistence Programs Manager here at the Mountain Lion Foundation. Gowan lives and works on a sheep ranch in Mendocino County, California. So thank you both for being here. My first question for y'all, and I will ask y'all to keep your responses fairly concise. And give me just a second here. I'll get this thing off the screen so we can see each other. My first question for you is about your own experiences with ranching. Please tell us a bit about that. Give us a day in the life for you. And then also please share with us the story about how you came to incorporate these non-lethal tools and techniques into your practice. How did you become a coexistence rancher? Kelly, let's start with you.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you
Great.
just fine.
So I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me. I became a coexistence rancher probably because I've always had that value as far as being. I got into working with animals because I love animals and I wanted to be around them and I wanted to make it my career. So I actually became a horse trainer and I did that for many years. And I trained cutting horses, which you use cattle to train cutting horses. So then I met my husband, who's a cattle rancher, and he's managed the cow calf operation on the ranch we live on for almost 30 years now. So, and I am not the type of person that thinks of using lethal controls or killing to resolve a conflict. It's just never been in my value system. My ideas are always to get along where you can, and to understand that when if you're going to have livestock, you're going to have dead stock, and that's the way it is in the business. So you kind of go in with the idea that you're going to suffer some loss for a lot of reasons, and predators might be one of those. So we are on a cow-calf operation, where, as I said, my husband's managed this operation for almost 30 years. And we have suffer very few losses without using any lethal controls. That doesn't mean we never have conflicts. We have had conflicts. Um, we came across some coyotes attacking a calf once. I think you have that picture, Brent. Do you want to put that up of the calf? So some coyotes were attacking a calf, and usually what they do is the coyotes will come in and they'll eat the afterbirth. So we'll see coyotes in the pastures after the cows have calved, but it's not necessarily a reason for alarm. But on occasion they will attack, and so this one you see here was attacked by a coyote, and it ran off when we came up. So what we in evaluating why something like this happens, the problem with this situation, it was a husbandry thing, something we did wrong that caused it, which was our cows, we select them to be really good mothers. And as part of that is when they go off to graze, they'll leave the babies with other cows to protect them. And then they trade off. So we have cow babysitters. Well, this was a first calf heifer. This was her first baby. And usually we bring those cows down to the corrals, the first calf ones, so that they're in a more protected area and we keep a better eye on them. We screwed up this time, and this first calf heifer had her baby out in a pasture. She didn't know to leave it with other cows, and it did get attacked. It was fine. Looks bad, but it was fine. But that's an example of one way that we protect our vulnerable livestock. But we have found that we have very few problems with predators without using any proactive lethal controls. I think those just cause more problems. And as I said, I'm not a killer. I don't like to kill anything. So that's why we don't take that route. We take the route of being proactive and putting systems in place where we can protect our livestock. And I think there's another picture of, do you have the picture of the pig on the hillside? Did I give you that one? You can see we even have those corrals that I said that we bring our first calf heifers to be protected. We when we had the fires here, and I think it was in 2019, we had fires that were the hillside used to be really tall grass. Once the fires came, I have a pet pig I was hiking with, and we found a coyote den right above those corrals where our calves are. So to give you an idea of how few problems that we really have is I think you have another picture there, Brent, of the viewpoint from that area, the coyote den to the corrals. To give you an idea, this is the same coyote den that the pig was standing in. And if you look to the top of that picture, you can see the corrals down below. So we had coyotes going past those corrals all the time without any problems, which highlights another thought, which is that just because you have coyotes around or predators or mountain lions or whatever does not mean they're going to be attacking your livestock. Most of them like to stick to their normal prey, but you always have to have, your eyes out just in case. So, and to give you an idea of, I think that picture you put up of my husband gathering the cows, that just gives you an idea of our landscape, that we're in the type of grass that's usually covering the hills. But yeah, we have about 200 mother cows so that we run. So that would be about 200 pairs of, mother and calf that we all. And so we've calved out thousands of babies over those years, thousands of calves without using any lethal controls.
Kelly,
So
can you give us a sense of, for folks who aren't familiar with the size of cattle ranches, how big is your ranch? Is it kind of on the small side? Is it on the big side?
for California, it might be considered on the bigger side. For some of the other states like Montana, Wyoming, it would be considered small, but we're on 500 acres, but we lease about another 4,000 acres. It's because cows need so much room it takes so much land to graze cattle. That's why it's not, operations like ours aren't as common in California as some other states, even though Sonoma County, like for instance, has excellent grazing. But the amount of land you need is astronomical, the amount of acreage, and its property obviously in California is really expensive. So we
Thank you.
lease about 4,000 of those acres.
Yeah, thank you. Gavin, what about you? Tell us a little bit about your a day in the life for you and about your ranch and how you came to be a coexistence rancher.
Sure. So I grew up here on the Mendocino coast. I'm the fifth generation here. My grandparents and great grandparents kept sheep here. And so I have always been in an agricultural context. Um, I was a contract grazer, meaning that, like Kelly was talking about, grazing on leased land. I did grazing for wildfire and invasive species mitigation on a lot of wildlife sanctuary land, state park land, private land, land trust land, mostly in Mendocino County, but also in Sonoma and Yolo County, including 7,000-acre wildlife sanctuary in Yolo County. So I have kind of been all over California in all kinds of different environments doing this work. And actually, as a contract grazer, I got to graze on land trust land where my great great grandfather is buried, because it's the land that he worked on. So I got to like visit his grave while working there. So depredations, losing lambs to wildlife was just a fact of life for me growing up. It happened every single year. To a more or less extent, I grew up in a neighborhood and a community where lethal response to depredation was just a given. People shot coyotes, people shot mountain lions, people shot bobcats. What I found is I actually started using portable electric fence because of the contract grazing, not because of wanting to try coexistence tools. But what I found is that using our portable solar powered electric fence, we stopped having coyote depredations altogether. Where in the past we would always, every season, we would have at least a couple of losses. And even when we did proactive measures like lambing inside protected barn spaces and things like that. When those animals are out on pasture, they're just so vulnerable when they're young. Well, the portable electric fence just stopped that completely. And that got me interested in learning more and researching more. And now at this point, we had a baby last year. We haven't done contract grazing for the last couple of seasons. As a result, we've just been on our home ranch, which is 40 acres on the Mendocino coast. Sheep thankfully don't need as much space as cattle. We raise heritage breed fiber sheep. I'm a sheep shearer. My partner's a sheep shearer. We sell wool and yarn as our main product from our flock. And there are a lot of mountain lions here. Where we are in Northern California was estimated to have some of the highest density of mountain lions in the state. And actually just last week, a mountain lion killed our neighbor's goat, which is directly adjacent to us, that was outside unprotected at night. We see mountain lions all the time. We see them on game cameras. We've seen them in person. They're very present here, and we haven't had a lethal depredation in about 7 years, which is since using these tools, they've just stopped completely. And from my perspective, the sheep we raise are heritage breed sheep. You sell a live sheep for between $450 and $650 for our breed. That's pretty common. They're as individuals, they're important to us. But as a business, each animal's is valuable. And the cost of these coexistence tools is just so much less than the cost of a loss. And one of the things about a lethal depredation response is that it doesn't give you your animal back. It doesn't fix anything. It's always reactive. It's in the aftermath of losing an animal. And in our case, we just don't lose the animals to begin with. We've been lambing, you know, it just isn't a factor in our lives anymore. And it still very much is for a lot of the ranches surrounding us, including we've had a depredation, like a mass killing of our neighbors' goats when our flocks were within sight of each other. And our flock was untouched and their flock had four kills in one night. So I know that these methods work because they've been working. And what I've found as somebody who grew up in the ranching community, is that it's one of the hardest obstacles is really just cultural. There's a lot of stressors. Like Kelly was talking about, cost of land is high. Most people who are ranching have other jobs. And one of the hardest things is actually getting people to use these tools, and getting people to take a chance on seeing if they'll work for them or not. So our basic suite of coexistence tools on our ranch is portable solar electric fence. We use flashing light deterrents in situations where they're warranted. We don't tend to just use them all the time, but in particularly vulnerable times like during lambing, we will. And so those are tools like fox lights, which are a random flashing tool, or also solar motion alarms that are motion activated that we can put on the outside of paddocks. But then our real secret weapon here is livestock guardian dogs. And I'm going to share my screen for just a second here. I'm not going to do like too much screen sharing, and you are kind of seeing the hang on, the behind the scenes here. Y'all see my slides a lot, because I run these webinars a lot. But let's pull this up. It might take a minute. The other thing that's happening in the background here is we do live in this very rural area, and we're having a big storm right now. So my connectivity might be a little funky, and I appreciate you for bearing with me here. But these are two of our livestock guardian dogs. They're actually both rescues. There are a lot of livestock guardian dogs that end up in the rescue system, in California and other states. But they are a fantastic, fantastic tool for peaceful coexistence. This picture was taken actually on a 7,000 acre wildlife sanctuary where we were contract grazing. We were actually grazing a fire break. So in order to have an effective fire break, you only have to take about 50% of the tall dry grass down. It doesn't need to be a moonscape. Sometimes you see that and it's not really necessary. But we were grazing a fire break around nesting golden eagles, which the sanctuary was trying to protect. And actually, the LNU complex fire burned through later that same year, and our fire break held fire. And the eagle's nest tree was not burned down. And also, incidentally, 40 homes that were on the other side of the property line also didn't burn down. So we were hired to protect the eagle's nest. It also helped a bunch of people in their homes, which was great. But just to give an idea, this is a huge field. We probably had about 12 acres fenced in one paddock slice, and we moved those kind of hopscotching through our area until we've accomplished what we're there to do. There's a ton of space to spread out, but you can see the sheep are really sticking very close to the dogs, and they do that. They have this particularly really sweet bond. So I wouldn't say that we use livestock guardian dogs for everything or in every situation, but across the planet, there have been a number of studies on livestock guardian dogs. They tend to range from about 96 to 98% effective in limiting depredations, which is a highly effective tool. And that's been our experience too. And in that same field that I just showed you, we had a big old mountain lion on game camera walking right along the outside edge of that fence. It's only a 42-inch high electric fence. Mountain lions are definitely capable of jumping them, but we didn't have any depredations and the mountain lion didn't get hurt either. So that is our recipe. We have a big enough flock of about 50 sheep, and we are rotating around enough land that we don't put them in a barn every night. For lots of folks that I support, they've got 10 animals or less, and nighttime barning might be more accessible for them. It's really about a relationship with your specific animals and your specific context.
Mhm.
Can I just say that, Gowan, that is the first I've heard of using rescue Pyrenees or rescue livestock guardian, and maybe we could, this might be off topic for today, but I'd love to talk to more of you about that some other time. Because what a resource that is. That's amazing, especially if you can find adult livestock guardian dogs. Yeah, I'd love to hear more about that and whether you find a lot of them that are really effective right away.
Totally.
Like,
I mean,
you find adult dogs in that situation that you can use pretty quickly?
yeah, and so we did a whole webinar about livestock guardian dogs where we talked about rescue a lot. One of the reasons why we're actually pretty hesitant to recommend them, even though they are so effective, is because there are so many of them in the rescue system, and you really have to be committed to the lifestyle that it takes to work with them. Because a lot of them do end up homeless for a variety of reasons, and they're difficult to rehome because they are so big and they need such specific conditions. But yeah, I've never bought a livestock guardian dog. I've worked with 8 of them. They've all been rescues. So that is very possible to do. You just there's pros and cons, there's trade-offs. Right now, actually behind me, you may hear him snore at some point during the course of this webinar, is Chago, who was in that picture, he's over 10 years old. I don't know exactly how old he is, but he's our retired Great Pyrenees who now lives in the house with us, and he just protects our one little lamb, which is our 1-year-old, who is his best friend and loves him. So I find them very, very, very effective and very rewarding and valuable to work with. But they're not a one-size-fits-all solution. They don't work for everybody.
Yeah, and one of the things that you brought up when you were talking was you started to get at that question of working with other ranchers, right, and promoting coexistence. And Kelly, can I turn this back to you? I'd love to hear from both of you. You know, how do you do it? How do you reach out to other ranchers? What's your approach? And yeah, just talk about how you approach that aspect of your work. It's kind of interesting that for both of you, you are ranchers on your ranch, and you also have jobs with these animal welfare nonprofits that and your job is to promote coexistence. How do you do it?
Yeah, it can be confusing worlds to live in. But when I first started doing this work, it was a lot more difficult. I felt like there was a lot less openness to it. And so I feel like, and that's been, I would say I've started working with Project Coyote and reaching out and doing the ranching outreach for about, let's say it's been about 15 years, maybe a little less. So that's a relatively short period of time to see a lot of attitudes, how much they've changed. And within that time, we've had workshops, and we've done some in-field studies on different deterrent methods like fox lights that Gowan mentioned that she uses. And I've done a lot of personal outreach to ranchers, going out to their places and evaluating their facilities and seeing what we can do to help prevent depredations. And as you mentioned, Brent, which is a really important thing that I don't think a lot of people understand, is that especially for mountain lions, a lot of times the bigger commercial type operations, ranchers, are have a less detrimental impact on predators than some of the smaller ones as far as California goes. And in California, I mean, because a lot of times the professional ranchers, they kind of know enough about animals to kind of know that you have to have some protections in place or you're going to lose all your animals. But a lot of times the hobby ranchers, which are big in California, are where a lot of the problems lie, and where actually most of the mountain lions are taken due to conflicts with hobby ranchers. So I've been trying to actively reach out to a lot of the hobby rancher contingent to help spread awareness and tell them, because a lot of times what they do is they get a couple of goats or something or a few sheep in their backyard in these semi-rural areas, and they just think they don't think there's a problem until they start losing animals. And unfortunately, a lot of times when that happens, they just think, oh, well, I'll just call, they talk to their neighbors like, oh, you just call somebody and they'll come kill it for you. And that's not knowing anything different. That's what they may do. So it's really important to reach, in California anyways, it's really important to reach that demographic, because that's a really large portion of the ranching community now. Here is the smaller operations, backyard operations, hobby operations, those kind of things. So a lot of my work that I do with Project Coyote is reaching out to those type of people. And I'm finding that nowadays they're much more open to it. There's a lot in the beginning, when you talked about non-lethal tools, there was a lot of poo-pooing from the ranching community. Sometimes they were pretty cranky about it sometimes. And now I think it's just understood that most people automatically have some proactive sort of non-lethal tool in place. That's not to say that nobody will unfortunately do lethal methods, but I think we're making headway as far as people considering the fact that they have to have non-lethal tools in place. I think that's kind of almost understood, at least by the professional ranching communities.
Thank you. Gowan, what are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, it's yeah, it can be really hard. I was very, very naive coming into this work. The way that I got into um doing, we had been doing coexistence work on our own ranch for years and had success. The way that I came into doing more outreach for other people is there was a discussion in our county about ending the Wildlife Services contract, which is the lethal trapper, which is government funded. Our county was spending about $100,000 a year to pay a trapper to kill wildlife. And also, dogs, a lot of accidentally caught dogs, about 400 over a 10-year period. Which people are largely not aware of, and other wildlife bycatch like turtles, raccoons. These are all animals that came out in this discussion that were marked down as accidentally trapped and killed.
And it's,
And
if you don't mind my saying so, I want to point out to our listeners that it's not that unusual for counties to have contracts like this. So this was not an unusual case.
no, I think more do than don't.
Right.
And the position that the contractor is the USDA, which is federal, and then each county has a contract with them or doesn't. And our county was making the decision of whether we should renew this contract or not. And I came to a board of supervisors meeting and said, well, I'm a rancher in Mendocino County and I don't use this service. I do these things instead, and here's what they cost, and this is viable. And, our county has a hard time keeping ambulances on the road. We don't have extra $100,000 laying around for a service for private businesses who could be doing their own work, I, was very naive about this. I thought like, oh, people just need the information, right? They'll be so relieved there are other options. I got death threats as a result of that. And it was a huge wake-up call for me. And it was also galvanizing in a way. I didn't really understand. I've grown up in just like the middle of nowhere my whole life. I was born in a town with fewer than 500 people at the time I was born there. Wildlife is a fact of nature, and I have never understood the kind of the feelings of anger and animosity and kind of violation when wildlife come in and take livestock, because I've always understood it as like we are sharing the same space. But for a lot of folks, and I really agree with Kelly, it is often folks who are hobby ranchers or smaller scale ranchers. And I want to make clear, I don't say that derisively. I mean, there are folks who do work on a smaller scale where it is not their main support, but that doesn't mean that it's not financially important for their family. It doesn't mean that it's not emotionally important to them. It doesn't mean that they're, hobby. And I don't think you meant it this way, Kelly, but I just want to make clear that like hobby doesn't mean lesser than commercial. It's just a different scale. But I do agree that hobby ranchers were um, much, much more likely to be engaging in lethal depredation. But the good news is it's actually much easier to manage coexistence tools and techniques when you have a small flock than a giant flock. Our flock is actually on the big side for using some of these tools. And there are some tools like night penning and stuff that we just don't do at all. That I end up recommending all the time for folks that who have fewer animals. And the our local Fish and Wildlife Department told me that they estimate about 80% of people who apply for a lethal depredation permit have fewer than 10 livestock animals. So that's a lot, that's a very small livestock operation to be justifying killing a very important keystone animal in an ecosystem, of which there are only a couple thousand in California total.
Yeah.
So we do our best. When I reach out to people, I usually reach out from the perspective of, I don't care how they feel about mountain lions. You can hate them the entire time that you're doing coexistence work. Just do the coexistence work. It will be better for you in the long run. It'll save you money. And, we try to make this point, and because it can be very counterintuitive for people, you're better off with the cougars you have. The only times that we've had high conflict times, where the only time I've personally been bluff charged by a mountain lion has been in the aftermath of a neighbor shooting a lion. That's when young lions come into an area, there's more territorial conflict, there's more chaos, there may be orphaned teenagers. The highest liability time for me as a sheep rancher is in the aftermath of a lethal depredation response in my community. So trying to make that kind of counterintuitive argument to people is what I spend the majority of my time on. Ecosystems are neighborhoods, they're not arithmetic. If you had 10 lions and you shoot one lion, you don't necessarily have 9 lions. That's not how it works. And so being able to distill all of these studies, all of these research papers, all of this rangeland science down into enough actionable bullet points for people is something we spend a lot of time on.
I like to say that,
This is-
tell people that animals are like people, right? Like you don't find people behaving their best in war zones. So once you put populations under stress, then you're going to have more problems. So I like the way you phrased that. It's true.
We've got some questions that have come in, and if you don't mind, I'm going to turn our attention to some of those in our last 10 minutes or so together. We've got a couple of them, and for those of you who are listening, if you want to put additional questions into that Q&A thread there, please do, and we'll try to get to them all. We've got a question that's come in about I'm going to rephrase this a little bit. It's about the differences between cattle and bison. And, I think, Kelly, we'd love to hear your thoughts on whether bison are more or less susceptible to, the threats of depredation. And, the question was about shifting, kind of the U.S. ag industry from cattle over to bison. Is that something that would help? I think there's a lot of complicated issues there. That would be a very political and difficult thing, but it's a point well taken. So anyway, what are your thoughts about bison?
Um, I would say that, yeah, as far as predation goes, speaking on it from just that angle, bison would be less vulnerable than cattle. There's a lot of complicated issues beyond that, as far as trading in bison for cattle. Bison are a lot, I've actually had a bison. They're a lot harder to handle. You can't rope them. They just suffocate. They're harder on fencing. They're smarter. In a lot of ways, it's nice to keep livestock dumb. I'm going to say this, it sounds very disrespectful to the animals that I, really respect, but there's, compared to wildlife, our livestock are dumb. They don't have to use their brains to survive. So, whereas bison are very, very smart. So that means they're going to be a lot more difficult to be around and use in the way that we have to be to use cattle and those kinds of numbers. And but they are more efficient grazers. There's a lot of upsides, but to wholesale exchange them with cows because of lack of predation would probably not work. And wolves can take bison calves down pretty easily. So.
Mhm.
Thank you. Another question that has to do with the different types, or I should say the different animals that are involved with predation. Are certain types of livestock more susceptible? Are certain types more susceptible to different kinds of carnivores? And so, what are the data on that? And can you give us some sense of which of those wild carnivores tend to be more of a risk for the different types of livestock?
Sure. Um, so the first of all, I want to say that part of what my job is kind of what I call barnyard CSI, where people send me pictures of dead animals to help ID what's happened to them. It's within my radius of travel and it's quick enough, I'll go in person sometimes and look for track and sign. I'll also do necropsy, look at bite patterns, look at caching or lack of, all kinds of stuff that we do to help diagnose what's happened. And the vast, vast, vast majority of animals that I see that are mass killed are by domestic dogs. That the number one harasser and killer of domestic livestock is domestic dogs. So to start there. And then from there, it really, really depends. Mountain lions almost never kill cattle. It's like a fraction of a percent. I've had a mountain lion ride around on the back of a calf, which actually happened in view of my aunt. So I get the whole story, which is the mountain lion went over the cattle fence, jumped on the back of the calf, had a really quick rodeo ride, and then got chased off by the calf's mother. The calf was fine. So things like that happen. It's very, very, very rare that you'll get any kind of significant loss of cattle. Sometimes they'll harass, coyotes can be an issue with calves. Wolves, really, the smaller the domestic animal, the more vulnerable they are. Lambs, we kind of just call them, nature's tater tots. Like they are defenseless and they're very easy to eat and everything wants to eat them. I mean, even large birds can be an issue with lambs. So there's a lot of different things that we do to try to mitigate those risks. It says day versus night predation is one of the questions. One of the best things you can do if you're a small livestock producer, put your livestock in a secure shelter from dusk till dawn. Most depredations are going to happen in low mid-light conditions. So that's sunset and sunrise and overnight, which is not to say that it never happens during the day. It totally can, but you can X out the majority of your risk by just having your animals in a secure shelter with a roof from dusk to dawn.
And I should point out that on the Mountain Lion Foundation's website, we have some information about how to create a predator-proof enclosure for your livestock, and also would be happy to answer the phone and talk about it. We have a question that's come in about the presence of humans as a deterrent for conflict. And it brings to mind the range riders and some of those programs. Kelly, do you want to talk a little bit about that, or Gowan, either one of you, in terms of what how can people's presence be used as a tool in this?
Like Kelly might
Okay,
be frozen. I can
that's
jump in on it.
air. Go ahead, Gowan.
Yeah, I'll jump in on it real quick till we get Kelly back. Sorry, we do have a big storm going on, y'all. So yes, it's just like in vegetable gardening, there's this sweet saying that the best fertilizer is the gardener's shadow. The more present you are, the more of a role you have, the more you're going to see, the more you're going to respond to in time. And absolutely, we have studies like the 2017 Santa Cruz Puma Project did a study showing that a mountain lion would even leave a fresh kill when it heard human voices. So yeah, so coyotes, wolves, bears, bobcats, mountain lions, all of them tend to avoid humans, and your presence by itself is protective. It's saying, thinking of how in the past shepherds slept with the sheep on the landscape. I've done that myself many, many nights. It's very sweet. Although sheep snore, if you were ever wondering, they do.
That's great. We one last question that came in, not through the Q&A, but I was wondering if you wouldn't mind addressing this, Gowan. When a lethal depredation response happens, the other actor in the story is the agent who responds to the rancher's phone call, right? And what about those folks? Do they promote coexistence? And what's the approach for outreach to that community of people, those depredation response officials? Welcome back, Kelly.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
I was just a question came in about the officers and other folks, the agents that respond to those phone calls when a livestock owner wants to, get help when a goat has been killed or whatever. Go ahead, Gowan.
So it's a really mixed bag. There are folks in fish departments of fish and wildlife who are fantastic, who are really, really great professionals, who not only do they know the law really well, but they also are super, super up to date on all of these coexistence tools and techniques. In states like California, we have a 3-strike law. You're not supposed to immediately be able to go to a lethal take of an animal on the first offense. However, it's a mixed bag. There are some states that have little protections or no protections. There are also some folks who, may receive a call like police departments who may have had no wildlife training as part of their education to be in their position. So that's one of the things that we actually help provide. One of our long time volunteers is himself retired law enforcement, Robin, and he does a lot of agency staff trainings just to help officers and help people who are in those positions where they get these calls to understand the behavior, understand the law, understand the options and the tools, really making a shoot not shoot decision, things like that. So we also do help on educating the agencies, and sometimes we have the agencies themselves reach out to us. That's happened for me, in the past, So we try to have an active partnership with them. We've also worked with the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife on putting together pamphlets and brochures. We see them as collaborators and colleagues.
Terrific. Kelly, was there anything you'd like to add there?
I agree with Gowan that it is definitely a mixed bag, and it just depends on who takes those calls. It can be all over the map, but at least in California, I think there's definitely some more problematic states, but in California, we seem to be doing a little bit better overall. I think the attitudes are a little bit better, but it can be rough for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Well, We've run out of time. Just as a reminder, Gowan is on staff here at the Mountain Lion Foundation as Kelly is on staff at Project Coyote. And so if you have follow-up questions for either one of these folks, I'm sure they'd be happy to hear from you. And with that, I just want to take a moment to thank both Gowan and Kelly. Thank you both for being here. And thank you for all the folks who are listening in. I appreciate y'all tuning in. This has been our Living with Lions webinar. I want to remind you that the Mountain Lion Foundation's work is funded by individuals like you who care about mountain lions. So if you're not already supporting our work, you can become a member at mountainlion.org. And on the website, you can also learn more about these amazing animals and find out how to be an advocate for mountain lions in your community. We did have a question come in about resources for livestock owners, and please visit our website or give us a call. And as a reminder, if you join or renew your support now with a contribution of $35 or more, you're going to receive our terrific 2025 Mountain Lion calendar. And it's a pretty awesome one. There's 12 stunning images of mountain lions in the wild. For our next Living with Lions webinar, which is coming up on Wednesday, December 18th, hold on just a second, I got a slide for that. Here we go. I'm going to share this so that you can get that QR code if you want. Our next Living with Lions webinar is going to be me, and I'll be back to share my annual end-of-year wrap-up, talking about some of the successes that the Mountain Lion Foundation has achieved in 2024. And we have a lot to talk about there. Despite some hard knocks this year, it's actually been a good year for mountain lions in several important ways. And I'll also be looking ahead to the challenges we're going to be tackling in 2025 with help from our partners and our members across the country. There'll be lots of time for Q&A at the December webinar, just like there was today, and I'm looking forward to the discussion. So we hope to see you next month. Thank you very much, Gowan and Kelly. Thank you. And
Thank you.
with respect and appreciation, I'm Brent Lyles with the Mountain Lion Foundation. Visit us at mountainlion.org, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Thank you so much, guys.